Hello and welcome to True Audio Files. Today we're going to cover Michael Jackson Thriller, and for those of you who've watched my videos for a while now, you probably know I've did a previous sound quality shootout. I want to say I did it around the time that the Mofi One Step was announced, but it may have been before that. I can't really recall, quite frankly, but the reason why I bring this up, and maybe I'll put a link to the video if you want to watch that to get some more detail, is because it's allowed me to narrow down my shootout to two versions on record. So I've chosen my favorite version from the video that I did previously and the one step. And basically, on this particular situation, I basically listened to Wanna Be Starting Something, Beat It, and Billie Jean to kind of do sound comparisons. But not only, well, I'll get into this and show you what I did for sound quality shootouts. So obviously, since I've already been starting to talk about it, is I started off with the one step. I have to say, and I know a lot of people have made comments about it. By the way, mine is 3852, not that that matters much, but I do really like this packaging a little bit better in some ways. It's much slimmer, sleeker, can fit into my, it doesn't take up as much space. I don't know if it's just because this is actually only a one record. This is the first, to my knowledge, it's the first 33 RPM one step that they've done. And for those of you also that know, this also is probably, well, not probably, but is the release that's kind of started all the controversy with mobile fidelity, because it was, although it had been known by a lot of people in the industry, and I knew about it, or at least heard about it, far before this release was ever even announced, but this one kind of brought it to the forefront for more people to understand. But that Mobile Fidelity had been making digital transfers of master tapes and then doing cutting them to vinyl while mastering them. But so this one was the one that brought that information more out in the open and made Mofi change some of their transparency policies, which I do appreciate. And as you could probably see on this one, it tells you exactly what the what they do now. And in this particular one, it says that they took the 1/2-inch 30 IPS analog master, transferred it to DSD 256, which is a pretty high form of high resolution digital transfer. But then they went through their analog console to cut it to vinyl. So anyway, Mobile Fidelity one step. And the winner from my last shootout is the early Japanese, I think first Japanese pressing, that I think really sounds great, as you can well imagine, because that's the one I chose. If my memory serves me, I sort of will look back at my notes, but I didn't give a wrap up on my opinion, and I probably should have went back to my video, but I believe that there were some elements to the first pressing that I liked better. I think it probably had a little bit more pop to it, because I think it probably was maybe compressed a little bit more. I don't know, but that's my vague recollection. But I still had a preference to the Japanese pressing. I think it sounded very close to the first pressing, but without all the distortion and other things, like a quieter pressing as well that I liked. So those are the records that I did a sound quality shoot on with. But I also decided to try to go and listen to some of my digital versions. And I will say up front, and I'll probably say it again in this video, I think it's really, really hard to do a A-B comparison between digital and analog, especially in the sense of, well, in general, but especially with a turntable, because there are so many variables in a turntable that will change the sound more drastically than a digital chain will. The cartridge, the alignment of the cartridge, the preamp, the phono preamp, or phono stage, however you want to call it. All of those things will color the sound more than a digital process will. So But I did it anyways, just because I wanted to get a sense. So I actually have a Tom Coyne remaster, which by all intents and purposes, a lot of people have said that that is their preferred version of the album. So I have a 2496 high resolution mastering of that. My understanding, and I don't know this for certain, but I believe that they also used that master for the first time on the new, at least CD and probably high-res downloads for the 40th anniversary edition that got released at the same time the One Step did. I have not had confirmation on that, but that is what I've been told. And if that's the case, then they'll probably, they finally got it right and released a great version on CD as opposed to the, I think it was the 25th or 30th anniversary, which was just awful sounding. Anyway, so I did that, the Tom Coyne remaster, and then I also have the Mobile Fidelity SACD. I got number 5162 on that one. Not that, again, that matters. But, so, I basically went back and forth on 4 different things, and I'll give you my take on what I found. So, I would say, going back onto the Japanese pressing, again, it sounded great. Great bass, great soundstage, really good wide soundstage, and just overall clarity was very good. And I really enjoyed it, as well as I should, because that was the one that I picked for a sound quality shootout. Pretty well balanced, and just overall good. So, put on the One Step. The one thing that I noticed right away was that it had a better sound stage from a kind of a 3D sound to it, or soundstage depth, although the depth is pretty similar to the original, to the Japanese pressing, but what you get is more, the space is more well defined between what's happening up front and what's happening in the back instrumentation or voices and things on that nature. So that was the biggest thing I noticed between the One Step and the Japanese pressing, is that separation. And it really stood out to me on that as being probably the biggest difference between the two. So then I went and listened to the Tom Coyne 2496 remaster that I have. The one thing that stuck out to me on that is, I would say that soundstage was very similar, both from the depth and separation to the One Step. Although I think the One Step probably had a little bit of an edge on that. Not necessarily the soundstage width, but more that the separation between instruments and voices from the front to back. But I would say the soundstage depth was pretty similar. It's kind of hard to describe that, and it's all kind of in your head anyways a lot of the time, right? So from an EQ standpoint, I did notice that the Tom Coyne had more mid-range and probably a little bit more bass. Not a lot, but a little bit. But that was, I would say, be the biggest difference I noticed. And the reason why I feel that way is because when I went back to when I went to the Mofi SACD, I found that the Mofi SACD and the Mofi One Step were very, very, very close. And it was very hard to discern between the two. I would say, I think, in my opinion, the differences between the two were probably more because of my cartridge, my phono stage, etc., and not the difference between the masterings, because they are typically, Mofi does have a slight difference in the masterings between the record and the SACDs. And I know I've heard from other people that they've felt that they've heard a big difference, or a difference, between the SACD and record and One Step. I heard some differences, but again, I chalk that up more to the differences between my phono, my analog, the analog chain versus the digital chain, more than anything else. So I would say there's very, very little difference between the two. And I have also listened to the SACD in my car. It's a CD layer, but I've listened to the SACD in my car, and it sounds really good there. So overall, what's my take? I would say the One Step and the SACD sound spectacular, and they would probably have the slight edge when you're talking about, space between instruments and voice and, all the instrumentation and things like that on the soundstage. But I probably prefer the EQ and just kind of punchiness of the Tom Coyne remaster over the One Step in that sense. So I think, like a lot of other people have said from the reviews I've seen, from an audiophile standpoint, if you're wanting to just sit and listen to the record and enjoy kind of the audiophile experience, if you will, the One Step / SACD are probably my go-to, the Mofi ones. But the Tom Coyne remaster is still probably my favorite overall if you're just kind of listening and wanting to, enjoy this for what it is, a pop / dance record. But there's very little difference between them. So that's kind of my take. The Japanese pressing still sounds spectacular, and I would say it's very close to the Tom Coyne remaster as well. So, if you're looking for vinyl, my top two probably still stand as the One Step and the Japanese kind of 1A and 1B, depending on what you're trying to listen for. So, but the Tom Coyne remaster is definitely, between the SACD from Mofi and the Tom Coyne remaster, again, depending on what I'm in the mood to be listening for, they're kind of 1A and 1B again. So Tom Coyne remaster and the Mofi SACD. So that's kind of my take. As is usually the case, there's not always a absolute clear-cut standout winner, because it all is very dependent on what you want to listen for. So, and when it comes down to that Tom Coyne remaster, maybe you prefer that extra mid-range or extra bass that it had compared to the One Step or the Mofi in general. So that is everything I have for today. I would love to hear your take. Have you listened to all these versions that I've talked about? I would like to know what you think and what your favorite versions are. The first early pressings, if you can find a good, clean copy that doesn't have the distortion that most of the ones I've heard have, that would probably be probably be right up there with the Japanese pressing as well. But again, depends on what you want to listen for. So, but I want to hear your take. What are your thoughts? Have you compared a bunch of different versions, and what is your favorite? If you liked what you saw here, hit that like button. If you want to see more of my videos, please hit that subscribe button. And love subscribers. And if you want to know when my new videos come out, hit that alert bell. I'm also on social media, sort of. I haven't been on there much just because of how busy I've been at work, so I apologize. But I have a True Audiophiles Facebook group, and I'm also on Twitter and Instagram, and all the links to those are in my description here if you want to check those out as well. So appreciate your time. Thanks for watching, and we'll check you next time. Thanks a lot.